Presiding Officer, it's for me been a very interesting exercise in democracy, listening to colleagues across the chamber. There are some speeches I will definitely read with some great care when the official report is published. I will read Alec Rowley's contribution, not because I agreed with his conclusions, but because of the quality of the argument that he deployed in support of his conclusions. I will read Bruce Crawford's speech again because of the moderation of his expression and the felicitation of its words. Ivan McKee delineated an interesting approach, and Adam Tompkins, not a man I have often found myself agreeing with in conclusion, at least had the decency to argue a case where step A was followed by step B, followed by step C. I see he's been absent from the chamber some time. I hope he will read a number of the speeches in this Parliament, as I will do. Now, Jenny Mara talked about how difficult it is to get into the EU. Well, one of the things about the EU, which is particularly interesting, is how flexible it is. It only took 3 months for East Germany to get into the EU, curiously enough. And, of course, for my constituents who have a particular hatred entirely justified and sustained by the SNP, who've been opposed to the common fisheries policy from 1975 to the present day, there is a curious exception in the EU. There's a part of the EU that's a full member of the EU that is not in the common fisheries policy, even though it's a coastal state. That's Gibraltar. Now, it may be a tiny exception, but there are in democratic societies, in democratic institutions, the capability of being flexible. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the United Kingdom and why the United Kingdom may now be past the point of recovery. One of the things that those who voted to leave in the recent referendum should perhaps take heart from, that under the present rules for admission to the EU, the United Kingdom could not be readmitted. And the reason for that is Article 2, which requires respect for democracy, stability of institutions, guaranteeing democracy. Very specifically, functional democratic governance requires that all citizens of the country should be able to participate on an equal basis in the political decision-making at every single governing level. The majority of national politicians are unelected, undismissible, and therefore the UK, in European terms, is not a democracy. So that's heart to those who voted to leave. Now, of course, there's a little bit more when we look at the processes in Westminster. Alison Thewlis, my MP colleague, has discovered that it's impossible for any parliamentary process to oppose a negative instrument. In this case, in effect, penalising those with a third child, requiring that it be shown to have been by rape. That is not the way a modern, progressive democracy should work. Now, I want to say a few words about fishing, because without doubt, those who had an interest in fishing were the most antipathetic to the European project, and with good reason. When I came here in 2001, my first speech was in the Common Fisheries Policy. It was at a time when we were savaging our fleet at European behest, while simultaneously the EU was funding the building of new boats in Spain. Those boats were, of course, to fish in our waters. So if we get anything out of where we are today, it is an opportunity to reset the way in which we have access to our European waters, our own national waters. Now, in my parliamentary constituency, the 4 candidates who stood in last year's election were all Remainers, but we all share a duty to support the interests of our constituents. On the subject of independence, it's worth saying it's not a particularly unusual activity. The UK has, I will, if it's brief, please.
Lewis MacDonald.
I'm very grateful. Can I simply ask, following the reference to fishing, is it Mr Stevenson's intention, should our second independence referendum go ahead, to ask the fisherman in his constituency to vote to leave the United Kingdom in order to rejoin the European Union?
Stewart Stevenson.
We have shown the kind of flexibility, and I direct them to Scotland's place in Europe, Section 127. Section 127, which reads, in our compromise, we are clear that under this option we would not remain within the common fisheries policy. We are being flexible and offering compromise. Would the others do the same thing? Now, let's just say a little bit about where the UK and Scotland can go from where we are, because at the moment there's only one word, it's a guddle. In crisis times, the UK has on occasion been bold enough to bring everybody into the room in an attempt to solve the problem. And in fishing, I return to the very simple thing, that the position of fishing would be protected, the argument would be augmented and taken forward if the Scottish Fishing Minister leads the way in the debates with the EU. I urge the UK to listen to that again. Takes a burden off their shoulders, gives them the time to do other things, would help us and ensure we get the kind of outcome that we absolutely require for our fishermen.